Greetings and welcome, my friend, to the next episode here, Red Delta Project Podcast live feed Q&A. I am your humble host, as always, Matt Schifferly, with another episode to help you reduce the chronic stress that's holding you back from your diet and exercise habits, help you break free of the diet and exercise rat race. And today we are basically pulling cords on what is the difference between like good stress and bad stress in fitness, because a lot of times in our fitness culture, stress is something that is not only kind of thought of as a bad thing, but it's something that's encouraged. Like stress, 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 stress. The whole point of your workout is to stress your body. And oh, if you're feeling stressed out from your dietary habits, that's a good thing. And no pain, no gain. If you want to look like a fox, you got to sweat like a pig. And the better you look, the worse you feel. Stress is one of these things in our fitness culture that is often told us is a good thing. When the reality is that for most of us, in most cases, stress is the very thing that's holding you back. It is the thing that is compromising your results. It's breaking down your body. It's compromising your quality of life. It is the toxic thing that is basically the root of evil in fitness, if you will, right? If you just want to kind of look at it that way. But of course, some stress is necessary. It's not to say that, oh, well, the answer is just to take it on easy street and eliminate all stress, because that's not going to be a sound answer either. But we want to recognize what is productive stress and what is unproductive stress. And maybe a better way to look at it is that there's not really so much productive stress in fitness. It's just what stress is kind of par for the course or part of the productive journey. You want to look at it not as the goal in and of itself, because that's one of the biggest mistakes that we often make, especially when it comes to exercise, is thinking, well, I'm supposed to stress myself out, therefore I'm going to chase after the stress. That the point is to stress my body out a lot. And this is a big mistake, one that I used to make for many years myself, because we humans are actually really good at getting the thing that we set our sights on. And when we make our stress the goal and objective in our training, then yeah, we're probably going to be successful at it. We're going to get really good at imposing a lot of stress upon ourselves, which is not a good way to go about it, because we all have a finite capacity to handle stress. I forget where I heard it, whether it's physiologically or psychological studies, but they talk about the stress cup, if you will, that we all have a very finite capacity to handle stress. And the more of this stress we pose upon ourselves past a certain level, the more it's just going to break you down. And it doesn't necessarily matter if your stress is from physical activity or emotional or mental stress on the job. It all just goes into your finite cup of how much you can hold. And I've come across this many times where someone has a very stressful job, very, very stressful job. I used to train this one woman who was always stressed out, very long hours, very high pressure type of job situation. And she was traveling a lot for work. And because of that, and she had all of the stresses that went along with traveling and stuff. So every single time she'd come into a workout and she would just be exhausted. Just you could see it on her face. She's like, I just don't have it in me to push myself today. And she was always on fumes. But at the same time, she's like, I want to lose this last 10 pounds. I want to get stronger. I want to build muscle. I want all of these things that she's after. She's like, so how can I do this? I'm like, you're just not going to. It's like, you've got to reduce some of that stress in your job. It's like, but I don't do anything physical. I'm on airplanes. I'm in meetings all day. I'm not actually doing anything physical. It's like, doesn't matter. It's stress on the job means that you can impose less stress when you're here in the workout. You just don't have the energy that you can do. You don't have enough room in your stress cup, as it were, to be able to handle this. So, sorry, but you can't do what it takes to get these results until you can reduce some of that stress. And there, it's hard sometimes to come to these come to Jesus moments in fitness or in life sometimes. But sometimes that's what we need to hear. It's like, no, you can't do it under your current circumstances. You don't have what it takes right now. You've got to make some changes. And that's often what we need to realize, because it's like, can I make it happen with this level of involvement? It's like, no, you can't. You're not okay right now. You have to step this thing up. And this is why we want to recognize the importance of minimizing or reducing, especially the chronic stress. Because the less chronic stress you have, the more you can easily handle acute stress. And it's the acute stress that can be productive, while the chronic stress is the one that keeps breaking you down. And when you have a lot of chronic stress, your ability to handle acute stress significantly diminishes. And that's what we're talking about today. Because, yeah, there's some degree of acute stress involved with, like, if I exercise, work out. But once again, don't make the mistake of thinking it's effective because it's stressful. Because no, it's not effective because it's stressful. It's effective because you create a strong stimulus in your training. Stress is just the byproduct of that. It's the cost of doing business. In some areas, like building muscle, stress may play a role, like stress in the muscle fibers themselves and stuff. But by and large, it's not effective because it's stressful. So, no, beating yourself into the ground and driving yourself to exhaustion all the time is not a recipe for success. And we really want to make sure we identify that, because we get really good at getting what we chase after. And if you're chasing after chronic stress, you're going to get it. But the bigger threat is, are you kind of, I wouldn't say brainwashing, but are you emotionally conditioning yourself to love the stress? You know, this is something I used to do back when I used to chase after stress. I loved just working myself into the ground constantly. And I would do things that were completely at odds with the results that I wanted, but I loved them because I thought that they were effective because they were stressing me out. I would go for long bike rides in the heat, wearing a hoodie without water. You know, this is the old idea of the football coach who doesn't let his athletes drink water during practice, right? It didn't do any good. In fact, it was very harmful. But the only thing you had to go off of was, well, it's stressing everybody out. It's really, really hard on them, and it'll toughen them up. No, it won't. It doesn't toughen you up. It doesn't make you stronger or more disciplined. It just makes you tired. And therefore, it's compromising your ability to actually do the thing that does produce results, which is create an effective stimulus that leads to the adaptation you want. You're not running as fast. You're not able to catch the ball. You're not able to remember the plays and stuff because you're dehydrated. So you're worse, but we thought it was effective because it was stressful. And that's what we want to recognize. Don't chase after stress. It's not a good thing. It's not something to be proud of. It doesn't make you stronger. It's not something to feed your ego, because that was my problem too. And I see that a lot, where people are trying to bolster up their self-esteem by, like, look how much stress I can handle. That's not something to be proud of. I thought it was, because my self-esteem was that low, where it's like, yeah, I'm proud of the fact that I can make myself miserable on a bike. I can ride my bike until I can barely turn the pedals, or I can make my diet so restrictive that I am a complete jerk to be around because I'm starving and my mind is completely occupied by food 24/7. Isn't that a good thing? No. No, it's not. So, yes, there is stress involved, but it's not effective because it's stressful. And we want that stress to be kind of like, lighting a fire. We place a little match to it. That's the fire, the heat of the match, and then we get the result that we want. It's the same thing. Acute stress. We want it there, and it's gone, and it's done, and that's it. No more, kind of thing. And one of the ways that we can identify whether or not we have the productive acute stress versus the unproductive chronic stress is, what is the long-term load of stress load on your body, mind, and lifestyle? What is your capacity of your stress cup like? Because productive stress, acute stress that comes from fitness, means that your overall stress load drops very quickly in fitness. So you have some stress, and then within a fairly short period of time, things get a lot easier. Your overall stress level drops precipitously. You have a lot less stress. So, effective exercise, but especially effective habits, are supposed to remove stress from body, mind, and lifestyle. You should be a lot less stressed out. But if your habits are producing a lot of chronic stress, where you have this constant stress on yourself, or even it's increasing, like the diet is just getting harder and harder and harder to follow. The workouts are getting harder. You're feeling more tired in every workout. Your performance is going down. That's chronic stress. And that's a sign that something's wrong. That's a sign that something's off because things are ultimately supposed to get a lot easier, not harder. And if it is getting harder uh, overall without an improvement in performance and results, then you're definitely on the wrong track. And that's the chronic stress. And we're going to talk strategies about that sort of thing here in a little bit. But let's get to some of the questions here. Because Aqua Hero, so, how do I reduce the stress of forearms with the IsoMax? It's working great for me, but I feel the load in the forearms is relentless. Yes, I'm assuming you're talking about like with the curls, especially, right, my friend? So there's a couple things you can do. First and foremost is make sure that you are irradiating the tension of the exercise throughout the rest of your body. With isometric training, you want to have everything else spreading out. So you may be feeling like you're trying to curl up the weight a little bit with your wrists, and you're not engaging your back, your core, and particularly your glutes and your hips as much as possible. So again, assuming you're going with bicep curls with this, make sure that you are setting the tension in your back, your abs, and your glutes before applying force into your hands. You can also bring the bar closer to your torso, so it's a little bit more like a drag curl, and that way it's not way out in front of you. That'll decrease the leverage on things. And make sure, of course, that you are pulling up with the biceps and not just trying to curl up the weight. Now, if you have a lot of forearm stress and work from things like your seated row, your deadlift, that sort of thing, that may just be a bit of weakness in the forearms and the grip at this point. This happens sometimes, particularly if you're doing a new exercise that your grip isn't really used to, then just keep doing it and the grip muscles will get stronger and it will cease to be an issue. So there, hopefully it shouldn't be a limiting factor very much. Go beyond that. When dealing with chronic stress and decreasing performance, what's the best way to program deloads? Right, with double tap training, especially when doing weighted calisthenics. So this is a good way to kind of decrease the chronic stress that a lot of people like to have, especially if you're really pushing yourself a lot with your workouts. So a couple of things. Number one, when you're deloading, the best thing you can actually decrease is volume, not the actual load. Even though it's called deloading, a lot of times the best thing to reduce is the volume on these sorts of things because it's the volume that usually creates more of the chronic stress than the actual load itself generally. I forget where I saw this, but the other day I saw basically one of these tiles in a seminar, and they were like, if you want to have less joint pain, less burnout, less nervous system fatigue, like all these problems we usually have with training and stuff, there's a simple solution to this: less volume. Cut back on the volume. And that's the case here too, is we're trying to reduce chronic stress on the system, less volume. So instead of doing like weighted calisthenics, instead of 2 or 3 exercises per tension chain, just 1. Okay. You can decrease the load a little bit if you like as well, but it's not going to have quite as much of an impact as decreasing the volume. So if you're doing level 1, level 2, and level 3 exercises, just do level 1. And then in the next workout, do level 2, and so on. So that can be a very effective way to go about it. And you are trying to get a lot more decreased strain in the workout, in other words, what I'm saying. So you're having less acute stress on that single thing. And the other thing too is when you're looking at the deload, is it even necessary too? So this is something to pay attention to with chronic stress. is when we have chronic stress, we have breakdown or the need for a breakdown. So dietary approaches, this happens a lot where people will be like, I eat fine and great and wonderful all week. And then the weekend comes and I get banned for life from the all you can eat Chinese buffet kind of thing. Or I'm fine all day, but then I overindulge at night. Same thing with workouts here. It's like, I'm great, I'm good, but then I can't seem to stick to a regular workout routine for more than several weeks. What's going on? This is a sign of chronic stress building up. It's not a lack of willpower, discipline, or forcing yourself through it. It's the fact that your habits are too stressful and the stress is building up over time. And then you need to, like, have cheat days or your deload session or a week off or whatever, right? And that's not a bad way to go about it, but I much prefer the approach of, well, just don't let the stress build up in the first place. This is why I'll eat some sort of candy or chocolate or ice cream a little bit most every single day. This is why I'm not leaving the gym completely spent. And this is why I make sure that my workout training is like, yeah, I could have done a little bit more. Like, I don't let the stress build up all that much. So I don't need deloads. I don't need cheat days. I don't need these periods to lay it off. Because at least for me, it's a hell of a lot easier just to keep chronic stress relatively low all the time, trying to not let it build up, and then you got to release and build it up and then let it release and build it up and let it release. You find this a lot in practical application for stress in life too, where people are at a job and they're stressed out and they're stressed out and then they got to go on vacation, de-stress and take everything off and stuff like that. I find it's much better to not ever need a vacation. Like if I go to Italy or if I go back home to Vermont, I'm going there to go back home or go to Italy or something for that. I don't need to relax, in other words. I don't need to take stress off because I'm managing it on a day-to-day basis. I generally find that's a lot healthier. Not always possible. Like, of course, stress is going to build up, and flow at various times. But when we recognize that the chronic stress is starting to build up, don't be like, oh, I'll deal with it when I get my deload or my cheat days or anything like that. No, I mean, try to keep it down low as much as possible to begin with. And this is why, people are like, I eat great all week, but then the weekends I lose it. Like, well, maybe you shouldn't eat so great in quotes all week. You should eat a little bit outside the lines of the diet, maybe on Wednesday or something like that. So that way, when the weekend comes, you don't have that stress to recover from. So that's kind of, it's all about the speed at which it builds up. Remember, everything in fitness is about speed. Everything in fitness is about speed. It's happening faster, it's happening slower. So the more stressful your diet and exercise habits are, the faster that chronic stress builds up. And that's why, when people are like, oh, I'm great all day long, but then I overindulge at night, I'm like, yeah, that stress is building up real fast during the day, versus someone who's like, I'm good for several weeks and then I fall off the wagon kind of thing. Color a little outside the lines. We don't have to eat clean or follow the workout routine perfectly well all the time. This is why I'm such a big fan of autoregulation and adaptation in training. Some days I can go into the gym and I'll be there for a good 30, 40 minutes with my double tap training, and I'll just have a really hard workout. Other times it's like I got two exercises in me for 2 sets each and I'm done. And that's it. I don't force myself to a particular amount of volume. And that goes a long way at making it a lot easier to keep the stress at bay. I'm not waiting for deload weeks or days or anything like that, because I would much rather just train as I can with whatever resources I have on a day-to-day basis. I don't want to over overextend myself when I'm exhausted, but I also don't want to hold myself back when I'm feeling ready to go. Deload weeks can be rough when you're like, man, I'm hitting PRs. I'm feeling great. I'm awesome. Well, no, I got a deload. This kind of sucks. Like, no, forget the deload. Just keep going. Push it when you want to push it. And when you're having those times when you need to scale back, scale back. It goes a lot longer for keeping chronic stress at bay. So that way you have the acute stress of your workout, you recover pretty darn quick, and it doesn't build up in your system over time. And that's generally the way I prefer to go about it. It's a little bit of an easier way to go. But yeah, you want to look at what are your habits and are they getting easier? So think about it this way, like anytime that you learned something new in life, like when you learn to ride a bike, at first it's hard and it's very stressful because it's very hard to turn the pedals, your legs aren't really coordinated and things. It's hard to do the thing at first, but when you get a little bit more used to the activity, the amount of stress associated with activity drops like a stone. Like, oh, this riding this bike used to be really hard and it used to take a lot of focus and concentration. And after a few weeks, you could just hop on the bike and just tear off without even a second thought about it. It was easy, right? That's the thing that we want from our habits overall. Everything that we're doing about diet and exercise should get a lot easier relatively quickly. And it should be relatively easy to do the thing. Now, as you get higher to your true potential, to the limits, it's not going to be that way, of course. But if you're starting out and you do 10 push-ups, and that 10 push-ups is hard, then that 10 push-ups should get easier and easier and easier and easier. Not always easy, but it should definitely get much lower stimulus from that stress. But that's one of the big myths in our fitness culture is people think, well, if it's not as stressful, it's not as much of a stimulus. That's not true at all, because the stimulus is always in the functional demand. If you told your body to do 10 push-ups and that last push-up was really hard and you just collapse on the floor out of breath and you're like, oh my gosh, that was really hard. You create a stimulus on your body to do 10 push-ups. But fast forward in time and you got 8, 9, 10. You're like, well, that wasn't too hard. That was kind of just a nice little warm up and stuff. It's the same stimulus. Just because there's a lot less stress with it doesn't mean it's a weaker stimulus. It's the same stimulus because you're still telling your body, be able to do 10 push ups. Now, a lot of times people will say, well, if it's not very stressful and it's easier, then my body's gotten used to it. Isn't that a bad thing? And the answer is absolutely not. That's a very good thing because two things have now happened. When you have a lot less stress associated with your habits, you can either maintain whatever you wanted to get out of that particular habit with much less work and stress, which is always a good thing, or now you can level up and progress your training and make it more resistance or do more reps or create a stronger stimulus than what you had before. And that's how we can build more muscle and get stronger and all these other things. But that's the good thing about it. Getting your body used to what you're doing gives you those benefits. Either the same result, a lot easier and a lot less stressful, or you get the ability to now progress. So when people say like, oh, you don't want your body getting used to the exercise, yes, you do. That's the entire point of training because nothing is possible until you get used to it to at least some degree. That is incredibly important. You want to get used to it because then you can either maintain the ability with less work and stress, great, or you can level yourself up and now create a stronger stimulus for better, more advanced results. Also great. Both of which are fantastic, but you can't get there until you start to actually plateau. And this is why plateaus are one of the most wonderful things in fitness, which I'll get into here in just a second. All right, so we got push-up question for chest building with push-ups sort of thing. So first off, if you want to build your chest up with your push-ups, make sure you are using your chest when you're doing your push-ups. And so you got to feel the muscle working because you can only build a muscle to the degree you can engage it. And things, especially like push-ups, it's real easy to just crank them out and it's all shoulders and triceps and momentum with your hips and things like that. So the first thing I would ask for you there, Foxy, is are you feeling that chest light up like a Christmas tree when you do it? When you get done with your push-ups, are you like, whoa, chest pump? That's the thing that you want to look out for. You can do this by making sure that you're packing your shoulders in the bottom of a push-up position. Shoulders are down away from your ears. elbows are tucked in tight, and you're squeezing the floor together with your hands. Make sure your chest or your back is engaged as well. The better you use your back to pack your shoulders, the more stability your shoulders have, the better your chest muscles will work. Otherwise, you may very well be doing push-ups with minimal chest activation, in which case you're never going to build them very much. You know, tension control and muscle activation is always the foundation to creating an effective stimulus for strength and muscle. Once you get really good activation of a muscle, anything you do will work great. But if it's lacking, nothing you do will ever work to much degree. You get there a little bit, but you're always going to leave massive gains on the table just because you're not using the muscle very much. You're letting other muscles do a lot of the job. So make sure the chest is really working with that. Second is make sure that you're getting the biggest range of motion possible. So getting that chest to the floor. If you have the ability to get a little bit of elevation, putting your hands on books or something, then go with that. You can do a lot more of activation that way. It's also, again, easier to pack your shoulders, use your back, and get your elbows in tighter. When you have that, it's a little easier to do that. If you have access to rings or suspension straps, that'll level things up quite a bit as well, because you've got a little bit of instability and you can get a bit more dialed in on where your hands are and stuff. That can be very good as well. So yeah, take those tips. There's a lot more we could go into it here. Push-ups are one of those things. It's kind of like running, where a lot of people are like, yeah, I know how to do it. I'm good. I'm like, you could spend the rest of your life learning how to do this to a higher level. There's always more to learn, but take that into consideration. Get your chest on, pack those shoulders, elbows in tight, squeeze the floor, big range of motion as you possibly can. And that right there will set you forward. And once again, it's like, well, is this going to make the results happen and stuff? It's like, I don't know. But the fact is, nothing you do will ever get you from A to Z. Your habits always just get you from A to B, if that. And then once you're at B, then you can reevaluate and say, okay, now what do I do beyond this? And then you can go from B to C and so on. You take it in steps. If we're looking for a diet or an exercise habit that's going to take us all the way to what we want, we're always going to be disappointed, because it's either going to be too big and we're not going to be able to comprehend it as far as being able to go the whole way, and we're going to get frustrated before we even take our first step, or we're only going to get from A to B and then that's it. And that's usually what happens where people hit plateaus, is people will make so much progress and then they stop making progress and they think something's wrong with the program, something's wrong with the diet, something's wrong with what I'm doing. The answer is absolutely not. That is entirely effective. To go from A to B and stop making progress is wonderful. It is the best possible outcome you could possibly have, because the other alternative is you don't even reach B. You don't even get any progress at all. But it's like, yeah, but I want to get from A to Z and I'm only at B and I've stopped making progress. This is terrible. No, that's wonderful. Plateaus are wonderful. Why? Because they are a period where we acclimate to the stressor that we are experiencing. It's your body's ability, and sometimes your mental and emotional ability too, to acclimate and decrease the amount of stress that you're experiencing. The analogy I always use is that of climbing a mountain. Right? You can't just go up Everest in one shot. You'll die. The body can't physiologically handle that kind of stress. You go up to base camp 1 and you stop. And you're like, yeah, but I can keep going. No, you stop. You have to stop. You want to stop, because then you sit there for a while and you acclimate to the altitude. You acclimate and you get your body used to the new level. And then you're like, okay, all right, now I can kind of breathe a little better. My body's not quite as tired and stuff. Okay, now you can keep going. Now you can go to base camp 2 and so on. It's the exact same thing in fitness. You can pack your shoulders and get a deeper range of motion and stuff like that and stuff. You're like, okay, I built a little muscle, but then I stopped. Good, stay there. Stop. Don't try to build more. Don't try to lose more weight. Don't try to get any more progress. Stop and just sit there for a bit. Keep going after it and make it feel easier on your system. Sometimes I give people what I call a freeze workout, where someone's like, oh, I can do 10, 2 sets of 10 push-ups and stuff. I'm like, don't do any more. I want you to work on range. I want you to work on technique. I want you to work on tempo. I want you to work on your breathing. I want you to work on all these things, but I want you to just sit there and purposely not do anything to make progress. You're like, but nothing's happening. Au contraire, my friend. A lot is happening because your body is still adapting and dropping the stress level down because you can't make progress until you can handle more stress. And if you're near your limit or you're really feeling like that chronic stress, you got to get it to drop. It's the only way forward. The only way you can make progress is if what you're doing gets easier. It's the only possible way. So you're like, okay, I've been doing these sets, 2 sets of 10 push-ups for 3 weeks now. And now I'm like chomping at the bit to do more reps. I'm getting as much as I possibly can out of these 10 reps, but I can't get much more. I feel like I'm just squeezing that blood from a stone there. Like, good, now go. And you're like, yeah. And then you suddenly got like 15 reps. And it's like, good, yeah. Plateaus are the opportunity to make progress because you're acclimating to your new level. This is how calorie hacking works here for RDP. We're not supposed to lose all of our weight in one shot. You're not supposed to be perpetually on a weight loss diet. You're supposed to lose weight for a period of time, stop losing weight, sit there for a while, get your body used to it. Then when you're ready to go again, then you can do another calorie hack and you'll make more progress. One of my best clients that I've got lost over 50 pounds the last year and even more in total from the last couple of years from just doing that. And some people want to say, well, it's 40 pounds or yeah, not 50 over the 18 months, but 40 over the last year. It's like, yeah, he only lost 40 pounds. Yeah, but he kept it off and he's kept it off easily. He hasn't gained it back. And he's like, yeah, this is easy for me to keep it off now. That's the value of calorie hacking. It's not about just losing it. It's about keeping it off. Oh, good question here. Does a bridge improve squat mobility? What kind of bridge? Hip bridges or back bridges? Back bridges where your spine is going back, or hip bridges where you're going with the hips? Generally, I would say no, unless you've got a hip mobility issue due to lack of strength in your hips. But I would generally say it's too different of a movement there for those things. I would say it probably doesn't have a whole lot on your squat mobility with the bridges, but it's still very good. I mean, you want to make sure you've got your glutes and hamstrings on and stuff. But uh, if that is limiting your squat mobility, it might help, but I would not put money on it. Good question, though. Although follow up, why are you thinking this? Why are you thinking this is going to be good for squat mobility? What is your experience? What's going on? Maybe I'm missing something. My man Joseph coming in. So Matt, when I do push-ups, I do deficit push-ups at the end of the last set. Hold at the bottom 10 to 20 seconds. I do 2 sets. The next day, my chest still feels a little sore. Yeah, sure. Sure. Soreness is due to a novel stress upon the muscles. It's something unfamiliar. The physiological adaptation we have to prevent soreness happens real quick. So if you are getting that type of soreness, it's probably not going to last very much longer. Plus, we usually also have soreness not just from a novel stimulus, but whenever you're working a muscle in a stretched and elongated position, that generally creates more damage, inflammation, and that kind of soreness going on there. So I don't think it's going to last for you here, Joseph. I think if you keep on that approach, then in the next couple of weeks you won't have as much soreness. You'll have some fatigue for sure, but not so much the soreness. Tim Dooms, good to see you again, my friend. Saying, Matt, is it necessary to focus on pure strength at times, like in CMAS, or is it enough to let a first set stay for the backfilling for strength? Yeah, it's not necessary to focus on the strength aspect of things. Remember, the strength is always about getting tension in the muscle. And a lot of times people will have like a periodization scheme where they're focusing more on heavier, getting more aspect of strength, and other times it's more about endurance. But you're never pure strength. The most pure form of muscular strength you can do is isometrics. If you're moving, there's mobility and stability and coordination and all these other things involved as well. So strength is the lion's share of the ingredients in the recipe, but there's always other things. But no, it's not necessary. It can be helpful sometimes if you're really at a stopping point. You can potentially, like, say you ran out of strength, as it were, but it's not necessary to focus on it. Sometimes if you're doing like sets that are usually 8, 10, 12, 15 repetitions, you don't need like heavy doubles, triples, and singles kind of thing. You can just go a little bit heavier, like 5 by 5 or something, and boost up your strength that way if you feel like a lack of strength is holding you back. But generally, that's not the case. It's not necessary to do it, to answer your question there. So when we're looking at plateaus, it's very important to reframe how we feel about them, because a lot of times we get in trouble. Again, we humans are fundamentally emotional creatures, and our lives are dictated by our feelings more than our actual knowledge. So when we feel like a plateau is a bad thing, then that's when we make drastic changes, which can undermine the very purpose of the plateau. It's like those guys climbing Everest and they're like, oh, we stopped at base camp. Okay, I'm going to like run around the mountain now, or I'm going to climb these boulders and I'm going to do 100 other things. And it's like, no, just sit, relax. Like you've got to acclimate. You're compromising your ability to acclimate with these things. So when we hit a plateau, we feel like something's wrong. That's not the case at all. Like no approach or plan or diet is going to get you from A to Z. The plan or approach is gets you from A to B, then you change it and you assess and be like, okay, now what's the opportunity? What do I do to improve? Is it range of motion or is it a programming thing? What's the sort of thing that I can do to improve while you're acclimated to it? Then you can improve upon there. But we love that idea of a happily ever after type of approach. If I did this and it got me everywhere I wanted to go from A to Z and stuff, that almost never happens. It's usually I got this far, and then once I got to that point, I got some coaching, I evaluated the program, I checked my technique, then you look for the opportunities to keep moving forward. But again, taking the opportunity to sit in that plateau for a little bit. How long? A while, a couple weeks, maybe even a couple of months. I've known people who will just freeze and stay with a certain thing for a good long time. Again, doesn't mean the stimulus is compromised. It's still there. If you're still doing the thing, the stimulus is still there, and it's doing more than you think it is. You don't necessarily need a number to be changing in the workout log or on the scale to know that you're making progress. You are still making progress in a plateau. It doesn't feel like it, but your body is always adapting and always changing. There technically is no such thing as a plateau. It's just getting acclimated to it so that the amount of stress upon your system is decreasing. And then once that gets lower, then you can keep, moving forward as far as the numerical aspect of things. Hamstring crampage. Question. Purell is saying, I feel my left hamstring cramps more during bridges in that specific leg. I also have trouble with the squat mobility. Okay, very good. So usually if there's a cramp in a particular muscle like that, I would look to two things. That hamstring could just be the weaker hamstring. A lot of times the cramping is due to just the muscle being weaker. So you might want to do some more hamstring specific work, hamstring curls, make sure it's a hip bridge, not necessarily a back bridge, that sort of thing. Nordic curls can be a way to go about it. And make sure your glutes are on that side too. Because if for whatever reason, if you're, again, back to muscle engagement, if that glute isn't really working very much, the hamstring is doing all the work and it's getting overloaded, and that's when you're cramping up. So make sure you're sharing the load between the glutes, hamstrings, also your calves too. Make sure your calf is engaged there. So that way you've got the force running through your leg rather than directly into your hamstring. That and making sure you're getting that worked with the particular hamstring curls is probably going to be the way to bolster that up. And so squat mobility, I know it kind of sounds a little crazy, but the best thing for squat mobility is just literally just trying to squat deep. I've always had issues with mobility myself, and the thing that allowed me to finally get halfway of a decent squat is literally just practice deep squatting. Just squat down and just kind of pulse and shift, bump, and maybe hold on to something if I feel like I'm going to fall back, but just pulse and just stay there. Just stay there, acclimate, get used to the deep squat. And sometimes that takes more than we think it does. Me, I'm guilty as much as anybody else. It's like, yeah, I'm working on my mobility, stretch, stretch. Okay, I'm good, done. Like, no, no, no. Like I had a coach one time. It's like, I saw your hamstring stretches. You did it for like maybe all of 10 seconds. He's like, I want you stretching your hamstrings for 10 minutes. Like, I'm like, what? It's like, yeah, you just need a lot more of the thing than you think you do. So that may be the case with you and your hamstring or your squat depth there, Tim. Is just more time in the bottom squat. It can be helpful to just practice or just get into squats whenever you get down on the floor too. You pick up a pen or something on the floor. Instead of bend over, squat down. Make it a normal thing. Acclimation is the key to reducing stress. Just get your body used to it. Don't just do it on leg day when it's like, yeah, okay, I'm squatting today. It's like, no, do it all the time, all the time. Make it feel normal. That's how we do it in the martial arts. You punch and you punch and you punch and you punch and you punch. An hour later, punch, 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 punch. It's like, gosh, I'm just so bored with this. Yeah, I want you to feel like it's just the most normal thing to do. There's no real stress or effort to it behind it. Because when you can do something high stimulus with low stress, whew, there is the sweet spot for you. That's when you're really making something special happen. But remember that it's supposed to get easier. That's the big lesson I want to really impose on you today. Diet habits, exercise habits, staying in shape, losing weight, building muscle. All of this stuff is supposed to get a lot easier over time, not harder. And if it's getting particularly a lot harder, like you feel that stress cup is really filling up, you're like, I need a deload every month or anything. I would say you're probably doing things a little too much to the point where you're just overloading your system. Back it off a little bit and make sure that you are basically using stress as kind of a gauge for how well your body's adapting to things. That doesn't necessarily mean it will get easier. Yeah, we've got that saying in mountain biking that it never gets easier, you just get faster. Because if I can go around a 20-kilometer course on my mountain bike and do it in an hour and 5 minutes, then it's super, super hard. It's brutally difficult from when I was a bike racer. So when my body would acclimate and get stronger, it would always be that hard. But the difference was I was getting faster. But again, the only reason why I was getting faster is because I was getting less stressful about it. If I wanted to ride that course in an hour 10, and for whatever reason there was a coach saying you're only allowed to do it at an hour 10 pace, then by the end of the summer, I'd be like, okay, I'm barely breaking a sweat at this point. This is a lot easier. It's like, yeah, okay, so now you're producing a given result with a lot less stress. That can be good. But of course, as a bike racer, you don't want that. You always want to go faster. So it's like, yeah, you have less stress, which means you can go faster, which means you're always producing a high level of stress for every single race, but performance goes up. So that's the choice that you always have is same performance, much less stress, or the same amount of stress, much more performance. But that can't happen under hugely chronically stressful conditions. Because when you're always fighting chronic stress, you're always recovering. You're always trying to just regain homeostasis. You can't make any notable progress that way. And this is why a lot of times when people hit plateaus, they're like, I'm going to work even harder. That's kind of going backwards a little bit. Sometimes there's a time and a place for that. Sometimes working harder is the way to go. But usually for beginners or folks who aren't really pushing themselves that much. You run out of that runway real fast, though, because you can only do so much work. You only have so much time and energy. But when you recognize it's like, this is as much as I can do for work, then yeah, sit in that plateau. Let yourself acclimate. And don't forget that this is about more than just physical stress. This is mental stress. This is emotional stress. This is social stress on your lifestyle as well. Because when I was a bike racer, that first race was mentally abusive practically. Like I would do that first lap and my mind was screaming at me to stop. Like, this is terrible. I cannot do this. This is absolute torture. But then after a few races, that stress would come down. Even though my body was still going at red line, as you do in a bike race, my mind was like, oh, this again, huh? Oh, okay. I guess all right, well, let's have some fun, you know? And you can see it in my demeanor during the race, where the first race I would just be like grimacing and head down and, oh gosh, oh gosh. But then, like mid season, I'd be in that first, lap and I'd be talking to the guy next to me, like, what are you doing after the race today? Want to go get some spaghetti? You want to go grab a beer? Yeah, okay. All right, I'll see you there. Just totally cool and chill because mentally, much less stress. I acclimated to the demand of the race. I was mentally and emotionally so much more calm. It wasn't as stressful. And this is the power of conditioning. You do it again and again and again and again and again and again and again, and you acclimate to it. That's how you do it. And a lot of times when we are suffering a lot of chronic stress in our diet and our exercise habits, it's because we're just running around changing things up too much. We're not allowing our body and our mind to get used to the thing. And again, that was the whole keep your mind guessing kind of P90X kind of idea. Not a smart play because you want to get used to it. You want to get used to it as much as possible, as quickly as possible. So when your habits are wildly inconsistent and you're doing this thing and then you're doing that thing and you're over here and up and down and left and right and you're always changing it up, very hard to establish consistency and therefore acclimate to things. When you can't really acclimate, you're always suffering more chronic stress. So that idea of, oh, this is getting easier, this isn't as stressful. If we're chasing stress, we see that as a bad thing and we keep ourselves guessing. That's one of the reasons why people felt like me. I used to fall for the keep your muscles guessing kind of idea because every time I went into the gym, it was beating me up. Every workout I did was making me sore. Every time I did an exercise, I felt, oh, geez, what the heck am I doing? Oh, boy, this is tough. Because I thought that stress was good. And it was in the acute sense. But that's only supposed to be temporary. So then, like bike racing, like after a few weeks on that exercise with that weight, I'm no longer going, oh man, that's a lot of weight. It's like, oh, here we yeah, all right, I got this. I got this. I got this. Yeah, all right. Woo, okay, good. Woo, feeling good. Right? You acclimate to it. And it just doesn't happen if you're always up and down and left and right. Or if you're like, well, I work out a few weeks and then I take a few weeks off and then do this. And if your habits aren't very consistent, it's very hard to acclimate in a plateau. And yeah, it's like, I'm always changing. It's like, yeah, but you're running around in circles. The scenery always changes when you run around in circles, but you don't get anywhere. And that's the big lesson is we want the plateau that allows you to keep moving forward. And rather than go A to B to A to B to A to B to A to B, we want A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and all the way down the line kind of thing. Go beyond. When doing double tap training and taking the 2 sets to failure, how do I not stress my whole system and get joint pain? I'm assuming you don't want the joint pain, but still stimulate the muscles growth. Should I leave a few reps in the tank on each set? Well, to a degree, double tap training does leave a couple reps in the tank in the long term. You typically don't take each set quite to failure a lot of times. So again, it's all about the reference of those two things. So let's say we got pull-ups. First set you did in your first workout, taken to failure, 10 reps. Second set was 6 reps. Okay? So then you backfill. And what that means is you're acclimating to the first set, 10 reps, 10 reps, 10 reps, and you're allowing the extra energy to spill over into the second set. So you're not really taking that first set to your max most of the time. And it's your second one that you're really maxing out on. Doesn't mean that first one's not effective, but you are saving a little bit in the tank on that first one anyway, most of the time. And you usually spend most of your workouts with double tap training backfilling anyway. So you're not going to take each one technically to failure. Otherwise, you're always going to have that downward slope where, okay, I did 10 and then 6. The next workout, I'm stronger. So then I got 11 and then 6 or 5 or whatever. So you always have that reference. Double tap training works because it allows you to stay at a number and acclimate while the other one is catching up. And then once that one gets a little bit higher, then you can go all out on the first set on the next workout and repeat the process. If you are experiencing So this is one of the things is double tap training is always about stimulate, don't annihilate kind of idea. Yeah, it's going to be hard. It's going to be stressful in the acute sense, but it shouldn't be beating you up very much. If you've got some joint pain going on, I would suspect there's a misalignment issue or a technical issue going on somewhere. Or you could just have an injury that you're dealing with. I've got an injury in my left foot right now. I did a little bit of a sprain somehow. I think I just landed funny in Taekwondo one time. And every once in a while, I'll just feel that ankle going, yep, no, there it is. Yep. I'm not doing anything different. I'm not doing anything bad or anything. It's just I got an injury there. So sometimes with like pull-ups, people feeling their elbows and stuff. It's like, yeah, if you've got a good strain there, then yeah, you've got damage and it's going to hurt if you are continuing to hit that damage point. You could have the best technique in the world, everything could be fine. It's just you have damage. So it's all about modifying the technique, let pain be your guide, that sort of thing. But generally, taking things to failure and there's not a huge amount of volume with double tap training. When you include all of the levels, it's a moderate level of volume. So that's not the thing that's causing issues. If you've got that right there, go beyond. It's something else is happening with that joint strain or pain. But yeah, you do leave a couple of reps in the tank with most double tap training. That's the way it's built, is to ensure that you're pushing yourself, but also holding yourself back a little bit with that two set relationship there. I hope it does feel better for you. But if you're just worried about the stress or potential injury, I'm not saying anything's foolproof. Everything has risk to it, but don't worry too much about it. You're probably going to be fine. That sounds confident, doesn't it? Yeah, probably. You'll be fine, maybe. But no, stimulate, don't annihilate is all about that, because it's all about how do we create a strong stimulus for hypertrophy and building strength while keeping stress at bay. Because fundamentally, we want to chase after the stimulus, not the stress. And that's the big difference with a fundamental approach to training, is chase the stimulus and let the stress just be wherever it is for the thing, and hopefully as low as possible. Because when we chase after the stress, then we're leaving the stimulus in doubt. And this is how for years, and many people do this, you can work as hard as possible, driving yourself into the ground relentlessly. And you think, with how hard I'm working, shouldn't I be getting better results? And that's not good for motivation, because you have a high perceived cost to a low perceived benefit. And that's not going to be good for your assessment on whether or not your habits are worthwhile. And motivation usually tanks or is greatly reduced. And that's our fundamental process that we always have to focus on. We can know about our training process and our dietary process all day long, but if that motivation process is suffering, you're not going to have any motivation for the habits when it comes to your training and dietary habits. So it's not even going to matter. Everything is based on motivation. We have to have it. You need motivation in order to eat right and exercise, like you need air to breathe in order to survive. You have to have it. And so that's why we want to be aware of things like this, where it's like we have the potential for a high cost to low perceived benefit. That's worse than an injury. That's worse than a little elbow tendinosis sort of thing, is loss of motivation. Because you can be healthy as a horse, but no motivation means no habits. But you can have lots of motivation and still be suffering a little bit of elbow issues. And you're like, okay, but I can work around that. You can't work around bad motivation. It just stops you. It just hits you right there. So there's my 2 cents of the day, my friends. I'm working on some really aggressive new content strategies here for Red Delta Project. Again, 2026 is a big year of change that I'm going to be bringing to this platform here. I'm going to be making things a lot simpler, a lot more practical, a lot more straightforward, and a lot more effective for you, based on the new frameworks and everything that I'm working on and the approaches for Red Delta Project. So make sure that you are staying tuned. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. subscribe to the podcast here, things coming out on Instagram, TikTok, that sort of thing. But a lot of big changes are coming, and it's all about simplicity, making things a lot easier for you and a lot less stressful to make it more practical and effective for you. So, really excited about this stuff coming out. Really want to make sure that I can get it into your hands as soon as possible because it's changed my life, and I'm very highly confident that it will do the same for you. So, I will talk to you at a later date, my friends. I don't know about next weekend. I'm going to be really busy next weekend. So I'll probably try to get the next podcast out Wednesday of this week. Wednesday evening, probably around 5:30 Mountain Time here. So keep an eye out for that. But remember that the audio for these podcasts are always on podcast directories. And you can also find these again on the live feeds on the Red Delta Project YouTube channel. So thank you very much for coming on in, everyone. I will talk to you next time. Till then, be fit and live free.